All right, I think we are live. What's up, YouTube? Of course, as you guys probably know, I am Guy, and I am joined today with my friend who is also a YouTuber. His name is AB, and he hosts the YouTube channel Watch Collecting Strategy. As a matter of fact, I have a link down in the description of this live stream slash video, so if you're not familiar with his channel, I do encourage you to go over there and subscribe. That said, I want to give AB a second to introduce himself to you guys and tell you a little bit about his channel. Then we'll jump over and look at the comments. I see there's people rolling in already. Hey, everybody. Let me give AB the floor here for a minute, though, so he can introduce himself to you guys. Go ahead, buddy.
What's up, guys? My name's AB. I run the Watch Collecting Strategy channel. Honestly, I just talk about watches and do a lot of reviews and film whatever I feel like. And yeah, what's up, guys?
All right, before we get rolling here, in the comments, Blue Shirt Buddha, how you doing today, buddy? Thanks for joining us. J-Rods, Neo, Jack, I Heart Sushi, Jared Packer. Hey, everybody, how are you? And there's Michael rolling in. Now, let's do the wristwatch check. I'm sure everyone's going to want to know. Me, I'm sure everyone could guess. I am wearing the Submariner date. I know people get a little touchy when I call it a Submariner and not a Submariner date. But yeah, that is what I am wearing today. What about you, AB? What's on the wrist?
I'm wearing my JLC Master Geographic, the caliber 929, so it's the older model, the 1995 to 2005, I believe. Honestly, I like this watch more than the newer ones because it has kind of like I don't know if you guys could see that in the camera, has more depth to it. But yeah, one of my favorite watches in my collection.
Yeah, that looks awesome. And kind of a dressier watch, which I think is going to end up touching on one of the subjects we're going to talk about here tonight, but we'll get to that shortly. Alex, yeah, I'm wearing the sub again, of course. You probably would have been able to guess that before I even got started. Now, before we jump into it, a couple of things I want to remind everybody that I am doing a giveaway. I'm giving away 2 Hamilton watches. Those watches were provided to me by Topper Fine Jewelers. If you're not familiar with Topper Fine Jewelers, definitely check out their website. Big thanks to Topper for providing these 2 Hamilton khaki field mechanical watches. I have a link to the video announcing, I guess, the giveaway, for lack of a better word, down in the description. So if you're not familiar with the Hamilton giveaway, check that out after we're done with the live stream. I just wanted to point that out for everybody in case you missed it. Also, a couple of Facebook groups that I do. I'm a moderator and partner of. If you guys are on Facebook, there's links down to those Facebook groups. First of all, a new one we just started, which is small, just Rolex, in honor of the fact that I'm wearing my Submariner. You guys, if you like Rolex watches, should go check out that Facebook group. Also, the Hamilton Watch Owners Facebook group, and a more generalized Facebook group about watches in general, Horology 101. Check those out. Again, links down in the description. Now that we are through all of that, AB 2019 is here. It is January, of course. What are you thinking about as far as watch purchases this year? And also in the comments, I want to hear from you guys. What are your 2019 watch purchase plans? But yeah, you take the floor first, and then I'll tell you what I'm thinking about for myself.
So before I get started, I just gotta shout out I Heart Sushi. He said I like AB's channel, but does it mean that the stream will be 2.5 minutes?
That's funny.
Okay, so my channel, I usually make really quick reviews. For those of you who don't know, I usually make it, I guess, 2.5 minutes, anywhere under 5 minutes. And I guess this time I'm forced to stay a lot more than that. But usually I do that because I try to make a quick, really fast review, just give all the information you guys need. But
I,
yeah, I thought
I
that was
typically
really
tend to run a little longer than 2.5 minutes, but
cool. Yeah, I saw one of your reviews. Was it the Submariner? It was like an hour long.
yeah, I think my longest one's about an hour and 10 minutes, but I'm not sure if it was the sub, maybe the Explorer. Regardless, I think we've probably got off base here. 2019 watch purchases. That's what we are trying to focus on here. What are you thinking about getting for your collection? And everyone in the comments, I want to hear what you guys are thinking about getting for your collections for 2019 as well. Not long term, not like the giant Grail watches, just something that you're realistically shooting for this year.
Okay, so I sort of have it in two groups. I have my more affordable, I guess, which is I guess, short term because I could buy those faster, and then more expensive, which might take some time. So I don't know if it will be in 2019, maybe 2019, 2020, but maybe I'll start off with something that I just added. I just added the SKX 013 to my collection. I already had this watch actually in my collection and I sold it, and I have no idea why I sold it. I just wasn't wearing it that much. But then after a while, I realized that I wanted a watch that every time I go somewhere that I don't want to worry about, I wanted to have a really good watch and like a good, reliable watch. So I decided the first thing I got, I guess, in 2019 was the SKX 013.
Now, do you already have a 007 or a 009, one of the bigger ones, or is this your only SKX at this point?
This is my only SKX. Actually, I already had this exact same one, um, the 013, because I had the 009. Is the Pepsi the 009?
Yes.
Yeah, I had the 009, but I didn't really, it was very top heavy and it was kind of too big for my wrists. So I sold that really fast. That's why I don't know much about it. I sold it within a week, something like that.
Oh, wow. Now, Jared Packard is planning on, he says in the comments, the SRPB 43, the SARY 057, and a Patty Turtle. I'm guessing that you didn't love my most recent Seiko video, Jared, because you sound like a Seiko fan. I ironically, a lot of people, I was surprised, kind of agreed with that video, but I got a few people that were upset with my perspective. But certainly, Jared, you are a Seiko fan, aren't you?
Which one is the SARY 057? Is that the Blue Moon one or is that a cocktail time?
There's so many reference numbers. I don't know them by heart.
Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't keep up either.
but so you've got the SKX 013. What else are you thinking about this year?
Um, okay. So there's a watch that I've actually been hunting down for, I would say 3 to 4 years now. I've been hunting this watch down for a long time, but the problem with this one is they're either fakes. There's a lot of fakes of them, I guess, or they're not correct. There's an IWC 3714 in a Panda variant. It's the Portuguese,
Mm-hmm.
but they had a Panda variant, not the. I know they came out with the Rattrapant one. That was a limited edition. This is also a limited edition, but they only made it for the Japanese market in 2006. And I've been hunting that watch down. First of all, like what makes me know that a lot of them are incorrect is the back of that watch has to have Japan 2006, like a big, I guess, badge on the back. But that watch, I only found it once, and the one time I found it was with Govberg, and they sold out of it like in a few minutes. After I found it, I refreshed a couple minutes later, and that watch was gone.
Now, was it like limited, or was it just in production for a short period of time?
It was limited, I guess. They just made it for the Japanese market in 2006. I'm not sure if it was a limited edition. It wasn't a numbered edition for sure. It was just a limited production, I guess, for in 2006.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that watch is really hard to find. If any of you guys know where I could find it, just let me know.
Let's see, looking at the comments here, what are other people thinking about getting? John T wants a 214270 to go with his Polar. As I'm sure you guys are, most of you are aware, I had that Rolex Explorer for 4 or 5, 6 months. I don't remember how long I had it. It didn't jive with me, but the 36 millimeter Explorer that Clyde loaned me, if you guys saw that review, I really liked that one. I'm probably more partial to smaller watches in general, unless they're a dive watch or a chronograph, which I can take it a little bit bigger. But yeah, the 214270 that John T is looking to get just never connected with me. Beautiful watch, don't get me wrong, high quality, absolutely. Just not the right one for me. But what about you, AB? Is that it, or you got any other plans?
Oh no, I have a lot. Also, shout out to the where was it? The thing. Yeah, dude said Grand Seiko Snowflake. I tried out the Grand Seiko Snowflake. I would buy that in a heartbeat if it was smaller. I feel like the case is a little too big for what it is, in my
Yeah, that was
opinion.
the same. That was the same vibe I got off of it. I really liked it, but if it was a hair smaller, not even a ton, I probably would get it. I think they have a black dial version of a spring drive, very similar to that one, but I think it's a millimeter smaller because the Snowflake's, if I'm not mistaken, a 41, and I think they have a 40 millimeter black dial that I'd love
Mhm.
to see in person.
Yeah, I would love to see like if it was 38 millimeters, I guess because I'm a little biased, if it was 38 millimeters, I would buy that in a heartbeat. But my next purchase is actually okay, it's not a watch purchase,
Uh-oh,
but it's
I
a
gotta
little
interrupt
bit
you for one
expensive.
second. I'm calling Neo out. He says I'm financially done with watches this year. I don't believe him. An addict is never done.
Once you're financially done, you start looking for pennies and under the couch.
Sorry to interrupt you. Continue, please.
No, that's fine. Okay, so my next plan, this is actually, I'm planning this to be maybe my next purchase. It's a little bit pricey, but interesting. So that's why it's not really a watch. I'll just say it. I don't know if you've seen the Speedmaster 60th anniversary.
I saw, is that the 57? Is that the one you're
Yeah,
talking
the
about?
57.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I've never seen one in person, but obviously in pictures and videos and stuff.
well, they have the bracelet for the 60th anniversary, which is 19 millimeters, and my CK2998 doesn't come with a bracelet. But interesting, I went to Omega and I asked them if they could order the bracelet and if it would fit. And then they said it should fit perfectly, actually, the bracelet with the CK2998. And they'll be able to order it for me if I tell them, like, basically that I have the 60th with me. So they'll order it as a spare part.
Hmm.
But it costs like around, I think after taxes, maybe 700 or 750 bucks.
That's
So
not
to me,
awful. Have you ever looked at how much it costs to buy a Rolex bracelet? My buddy
I
that loaned me the Batman, he got a Jubilee bracelet for that Batman, and like it was like I think he said $1,500. Crazy expensive.
I didn't even want to know. Honestly, when they said $700, I was I'm not relieved because still $700 I could buy a watch or two watches with that.
Yeah,
But I thought they were gonna say anywhere from 1,000 to $1,500, especially it's for the 60th anniversary and so on, you know.
that would have been my guess. Yeah.
But the only thing that's like I'm hesitant because I want to buy the Black Bay in 39 millimeters, not necessarily the 58, but it's either like I wait and buy the Black Bay first and then that bracelet, or um or I'll just buy the bracelet because I'm waiting for them to do something in Basel World because I believe with all the research and development for the 39 millimeter movement, they have to be coming out with something that's 39 millimeters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In the comments, watch displays here. Hey, buddy, how you doing? He says he sold his Explorer and all of his Submariners. You're crazy. You got to keep at least one, man.
Yeah. And I'll just take the comments in a second.
So I'll jump into some of the things that I'm thinking about this year, and I've had already.
Mhm.
Technically, it was at the end of last year. I got something, and it was kind of it was an up and a down. Unfortunately, I picked up the 36 millimeter Oyster Perpetual with black dial, and I never really told anybody about it. I think I posted one picture of it on Instagram. I had mentioned it to you, and you were saying, "Oh, just the other day, I'm waiting to see a review on that Oyster Perpetual." Well,
Mhm.
I actually ended up returning that watch.
Okay.
I was a little disappointed with the timekeeping, and of course, people are going to say I'm being too critical or whatever. But when I buy a Rolex for, in this case, what was that watch, $5,000 or whatever, I want it to be as accurate as it's supposed to be, and it's debatable on whether or not you should really expect plus or minus 2 seconds per day. I've seen that argued over and over again online in different places, but mine was outside of that. It was running like about +4. The thing that kind of bothered me more, though, was I put it on my time grapher and the amplitude was really low. I was
Mhm.
getting sub 260-degree amplitude readings in the dial up position. Whereas if I put my Submariner on my time grapher, I get 295 to 300 degrees, which is pretty much perfect. Now, 260, I guess, is still technically in spec for Rolex, but I talked to a couple of different independent watchmakers that are CW21 certified, and both of them said, like, man, I would not be happy with a brand new Rolex running a 3130 movement that is putting out only 260 degrees of amplitude. So I brought it back to my Rolex dealer and I said, I'm just not happy with this. And they let me return it. I have a really good relationship with them. So unfortunately, my 2019 watch purchase plan has already hit a little bit of a speed bump, and that was one of the big watches that I was planning to get this year. I really want to get a smaller 36 to 38 millimeter watch that can be a little more understated than the Submariner, but still something that I can wear all the time, every day, and not really like super dressy on a metal bracelet. That's still in the running, I guess. Maybe I would get another one, but I would be a little bit more diligent about having the movement specs tested on the time grapher before I purchase it. But I'm also thinking about a Grande Seiko. There's a particular model, the reference off the top of my head escapes me, but it's 37 millimeters. I want to see one of those in person as well. So that could be an alternative to that Rolex 36 millimeter Oyster Perpetual.
Honestly, the Oyster Perpetual that you got, like, since you bought it brand new, I completely understand what you mean. Like, even if it's off, if there's anything that's off about the watch, and you literally just bought it, like when you texted me, not even a month ago, I don't think. Yeah, you just bought that. It's not like I would have returned it as well if I were you.
Yeah. Jesse Childers, hello from Naples, Florida. Hey, I'm in Naples as well. That's pretty funny. I was at an office building and I was getting on an elevator and someone walks up to me and they're like, "Are you Guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I watch you on YouTube." So apparently there's a few people from Naples that are fans of the channel. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, wow, yeah. Have you considered the Black Bay 36?
Someone loaned me one and I reviewed it and I did not like the proportions, the 19 millimeter lug width. It wears smaller than a 36 millimeter Rolex wears, and I really don't want to go smaller. I want I don't know. The long and short of it is I just didn't like the size and the scale, the
19
proportions.
millimeters is very irritating. Actually, both my watches, the CK2998 in front of me and the JLC, both of them are 19 millimeters. I don't know why they have to do that, especially with the CK2998. Like the 19 millimeters, the proportion doesn't make sense. It would have looked nicer if it was 20 millimeters. I don't know if you can kind of see that. Probably not. But the lugs taper too much to the point where it's almost awkward, but obviously I'm biased because it's my watch. But the 19 millimeters is just kind of an irritating strap size.
Yeah, I mean, if you're somebody that likes swapping out straps, obviously it can be a real pain. But just from a visual perspective, I can kind of perceive that thinner look. And it's funny, like I don't generally like watches that have 22 millimeter lugs, and I almost never like watches that have 18 millimeter lug widths. Like 20 is just perfect in my opinion. But that 19, maybe it's just in my head. Maybe I'm not even maybe I just know that it's smaller and that bothers me. And it's like some sort of some sort of obsessive thing about just like knowing that it's not exactly what I think I prefer. Maybe I am actually perceiving it. I'm not exactly sure, but
I agree with you. 21 millimeters just kills me. Like if there's a watch that I love and it's 21 millimeters, that's it. I'm not buying that watch.
Yeah. But yeah, that's so that was my first watch dilemma of 2019. I bought that Oyster Perpetual. I was not pleased with the timekeeping, and again, it's like was running +4 instead of +2. Most people would laugh at me and say like, "Who cares?" Like the issues with the lower amplitude readings that worries me about like the long term. But again, it's within spec from Rolex, so. Yeah, other than that, though, what else am I thinking about this year? I had borrowed and reviewed the Hamilton Intramatic, the chronograph. I'm kind of thinking about that one. I really liked that watch with maybe two small exceptions. The lug-to-lug length on it was really long, but they have relatively thin lugs, so it didn't feel overwhelming. Like it wasn't big, beefy lugs. So despite the fact that they were long, they weren't really prominent. But the other issue was it's only available on a leather strap, and I'm guessing that you and I differ in our opinions on this. I don't typically wear watches on straps. I very much prefer metal bracelets. Maybe it's just being in Florida and the humidity. I don't know. I rarely wear watches on leather straps. Rubber I can usually do okay, but But yeah, that's a watch that I'm thinking about, that Intramatic chronograph from Hamilton. I just wish it was available on a bracelet.
Have you seen the new Hamilton Instamatic, the smoke dials?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
They just released the the simple time only. It's a dress watch, the Instamatic, I think it's called.
Intramatic,
Um,
yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
with the smoke dial. It looks like a Moser. I don't know if you've seen that. I only saw it like by chance this morning actually, and they literally just released it I think a few weeks ago.
I'll have to check that out. No, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, that watch is stunning. But yeah, no, that Hamilton actually, I was texting you because I was also considering that Hamilton. The first time I ever saw that watch was Zach from Worn and Wound.
Hmm.
Yeah, he has the vintage version of it, and I was considering the newer one, but I kind of liked how the crown of the vintage one was on the 9 o'clock mark rather than the 3 o'clock mark.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen the one the watch was like derived from, I suppose. That watch was amazing, but vintage, it's really hard to service. Not to mention, it's scary to service. Also, that watch is going for like 5 grand now, so I'm not spending that on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's a lot. Let's see. Dale Taylor, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining us. He says, same here in Alabama. Bracelets work best when the humidity is 100%. Yeah, that's like South Florida. Basically 90% of the year. It's difficult to wear anything but bracelets. Like I said, rubber kind of works sometimes, but leather just, yeah, it gets uncomfortable. Now, what else? You got any other watches in your purchase pipeline, or should we move on to something else?
I have I have a lot of watches. But first of all, shout out to Aza. He said, Grail achieved. I received my TVs. I actually received the TVs that I don't know. I just want to say be careful with that watch because it's not water resistant whatsoever. That watch immediately, like when I went outside, because my house is really cold, and then I went outside and it's all of a sudden really hot because I'm also here in Florida, and then water got into the watch, like got in under the crystal, water vapor, and it never left the crystal. So I sent it right back. I didn't even bother reviewing that watch.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
just the temperature transition got humidity inside of the case, huh?
yeah, no, and not just that. Like I know it's a what's that watch go for? Like $25 or something like that. I'm just saying, like, just keep it away from water.
Sean T, thoughts on 50th moon landing Speedmaster? Have they given any sort of actual information yet, or I haven't
No,
heard anything.
all I know is they're reviving the 321 caliber.
Oh yeah, I did see that, but I didn't know if that was like separate from some sort of anniversary edition Moonwatch or if that was in conjunction with it.
I think the 321 caliber is gonna be really expensive. That's what if that's what he's talking about, like the 50th, it's gonna be really expensive. That's my only thoughts on that.
Yeah,
If
I
they're
was
gonna
talking
do it.
to Clyde. I think I think his guess was 9,500. Whatever Speedmaster they come out with that has a 321, he thinks $9,500. I don't even know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
A lot of people were surprised because the 321, I believe the license belonged to it was a Breguet. The Breguet had the rights to the 321 caliber, and from what I heard, they wouldn't sell it back to Omega. So I think Omega must have like paid a lot of money. The reason why I think it's going to be expensive is because Breguet wouldn't give the rights back to Omega. At least that's from like my research, and then all of a sudden they have the 321 caliber. So my guess is either Breguet sold the rights back really, like it was really expensive to sell it back to the point that Omega is going to make their watches really expensive when they put the 321 caliber in it.
Hmm.
But that's why I think it's going to be really expensive because for the longest time Breguet would not sell that movement back. I believe it was Breguet, either Breguet or Blancpain, but I'm pretty sure it was Breguet.
Interesting. I didn't realize that at all. All right,
Honestly,
let's do one more watch you're thinking about for this year, and then we'll move on to some new topics.
let me see. Actually, it might be this year, maybe next year, but I do want to add a Rolex back in my collection. but I sort of learned my lesson. I bought the Datejust and Date and Oyster Perpetual models so many times. Like I've owned probably 5 or 6 of them, and I never really enjoyed them that much, whether it was vintage or modern. But a watch that I really like is the Yachtmaster in with the blue dial.
The thing about the Yachtmaster, I don't like the bezel. I just something about the like engraved bezel doesn't jive
Yeah.
with me.
The platinum bezel. It's definitely maybe it's like a Marmite watch. I haven't seen a lot of people liking the Yachtmaster. I just really like it because I tend to like things that are a bit different. So that's probably why I like it so much. I personally really like the platinum bezel. And the blue dial is amazing. I don't like the platinum dial, the gray dial version,
Hmm.
but I really, really want that Yachtmaster. It's been on my list for like, I think all of 2017. So maybe, I'm not sure, maybe a Submariner, but it's between those two. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna add either a Submariner or a Yachtmaster.
Current ceramic Submariner or an older one?
Yeah, no, current ceramic, because the older ones like the 14060 and stuff like that, they're I enjoy them, but realistically, I want to be wearing that watch pretty much every day, and I don't want to worry too much about it. And something about the 14060, two things I don't like about it. I don't like when bezels like get scratched up, and aluminum bezels get scratched up really easily.
Yeah, of course.
And what was the second thing? The bracelet. The bracelet
Yeah.
feels a little bit flimsy, and I'll forgive it with an SKX, but I just can't seem to forgive it with a
Not for
Submariner.
a $7,000 Rolex, right?
I can't do it. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, that's the charm about it. It's a quote unquote vintage watch," but I can't get past the fact that the bracelet is really flimsy. I know with the no holes case, I'm not sure if there is with the Submariner. I know the Explorer 2 has a version with the no holes case, and it's a little bit better, but still the bracelet seems really cheap in my opinion.
Now, Frank Candy in the comments says thoughts on Longines moon phase, and it's funny that he mentions that. I'm not familiar with the watch that he's asking about, but I was looking at Longines website today because they have this. It's in their heritage collection. It's a conquest. It's kind of a dressy watch. I kind of really like that watch, and that's gonna kind of segue into the next topic we're going to talk about: sports watches versus dress watches. But I'm not familiar with the Longines moon phase. Are you familiar with that one that he's asking about? So, moral of the
Yeah,
story is I don't have any thoughts on it.
are you talking about the triple calendar one? Who asked the question? I couldn't find it.
Frank Handy says
Oh,
thoughts on Longines moon phase.
I think maybe he's talking about the triple calendar. The only thing I'll say is I can't help but think about value, and it's a good watch, but like don't ever buy that watch brand new because
Yeah.
Longines is really 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 weak on the pre-owned market. Um, so yeah, but it's a great watch. Longines has a lot of heritage. I believe they're one of the first people to kind of industrialize wristwatches.
Yeah, he just said in the comment there, yes, triple calendar. So you must be on the right page with him.
Oh yeah, aesthetically, I'm not gonna lie, it's not my cup of tea. When it comes to moon phase, honestly, for the money, I know a lot of people might hate this, but I would go with the Frederic Constant, the 40.5 millimeter moon phase.
I
I
really
love
like
that.
that watch. I think it's probably, I haven't seen it in person. I think it would be a hair too big for me, but I think it's a really attractive watch.
It's amazing, and a lot of people have a problem with it. They're saying it's very similar to the Patek. I can't remember the reference number, but I mean, come
Most
on,
of most of
guys.
their watches are similar to Patek. They're virtually Patek homage watches, but I don't care. I like the watch, and I think it's
Not to
priced right.
mention, I guess in a way, like Frederic Constant, it's a very simple dial with a moon phase at 6 o'clock. Omega has the same watches similar to the Patek. I can't remember what caliber it was. Rolex even had a watch that's very similar to that Patek. Pretty much a lot of watch brands have very similar watches, so I don't see it necessarily as homage to Patek. It's a very simple dress watch, but you could get it for around $1,000, and it's an in-house movement, whether that's a good thing for you or not. Um, and it's a beautiful watch, and it wears very modern. And I used to own that watch, and I absolutely love it, and I would buy it back in a heartbeat.
Chip Wong asks, Can we talk about Bitcoin and high school cheerleaders? I don't see that happening tonight, buddy. Sorry to disappoint you.
You can buy watches with Bitcoin though.
Yeah. So the next topic we wanted to kind of talk about, and I think we sort of almost segued into it, sports watches versus dress watches. Now, you are, without a doubt, primarily a dress watch person. I've been watching your channel for long enough that I feel like I'm safe in making that assumption. And as you could probably guess, I am by and large a sports watch person. So I think this is going to be an interesting topic. Now, tell me and the audience why you prefer dress watches, assuming I'm correct, and what your thoughts
You're
are on.
100% correct. And let me say this. I'm gonna give you guys the short answer, and then I'm gonna try to not talk too much with the long answer. The short answer is aesthetics. Obviously, I'm more aesthetically like I like it more aesthetically, but I think that when it comes to sports watches, it's always nice to have like dive watches, for example, that's 300 meters. It's always nice to have like a really rugged watch. And I'm not against sports watches, obviously. I do like sports watches. I have an SKX right here. And I don't know if I could call this Speedmaster a sports watch or a dressier watch. I guess it's a dressier watch. But one of the biggest
It's funny, the
reasons-
Speedmaster becomes a dressy watch the minute you put it on that black alligator strap, and it becomes a sports watch the minute you put it on a metal bracelet.
yeah, you're right. I guess it's a hybrid maybe. But I like ever since I was young, I can't find my first watch I've ever owned, but the first watch I've ever owned was a dress watch. It was like a very Bauhaus design. So I don't know if it kind of derived from ever since I was young, I was used to that watch because I find like a lot of G-Shock, like people who love G-Shocks, they love it because they had a G-Shock when they were a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, that makes
Um,
sense.
So that's kind of what happened with me. But also, I find that dress watches, just in my opinion, look a lot better than a dive watch. I don't need a dive watch. I know a lot of people a lot of people complain, oh, this dive watch isn't 300-meter water resistance. But realistically, I'm not a diver. I will never go diving. I like some dive watches like the Submariner, the SKX, and I do appreciate divers. But aesthetically, I just find dress watches more appealing. It's even more mass appealing, I suppose. That's why people like Daniel Wellington, Movement, and stuff like that, their watches are dress watches, quote unquote, and they're one of the most popular like watch it whether we can call them watches or whatever. They're super popular because of their aesthetics, you know what I mean? Because I feel like dress watches are made to look classier and better, whereas sports watches, they're tool watches in a
Yeah,
way.
I mean, I like the style of a lot of dress watches. For example, the JLC Master Control Moon, and we were talking about
Mhm.
like I think that's a beautiful watch. Even the Frederic Constant, I think that's a really attractive watch. Nomos, there's a couple of Nomos watches I really like. My problem with them is just the comfort. Again, it's basically if you're wearing a quote unquote dress watch, it's going to be on a leather strap, and I can't wear watches on leather straps day in and day out. It's just not comfortable for me. Number two, sports watches typically are a lot more durable, not just in terms of water resistance, which I agree with you. I think that the people that are obsessed with water resistance are um, kind of blowing that out of proportion. I don't think that the actual depth rating is important, but the just the overall durability of sports watches in general, they can take a little bit more of a beating than your
I have a
typical.
little debate for you though. There's something also I was thinking about when it comes to dress watches, because you mentioned leather straps.
Mhm.
But also, I kind of believe that there's a lot of dress watches. Of course, I'm not talking about like a 34 millimeter Patek Calatrava, for example, but a lot of dress watches do look good. Like if it's a simple time only dress watch, they do look good on NATO straps and stuff like that. And kind of proof to that is some of the most popular watches from, I hate to keep referencing them, but Daniel Wellington, they put the very simple style with NATO straps, and that's really popular. And in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily look out of place. And you can wear them. Like for example, my JLC, I believe it's 50 meters water resistance. I wear this watch and I don't necessarily worry about it. I have a what's the strap called? It's not necessarily a rubber strap, but I put this watch on a strap that's more water resistant, And knowing that it's 50 meters water resistant, I'm not that worried about it. Sapphire crystal, I'm not worried about it getting scratched. I do get the appeal that sports watches will, I guess, do anything if you decide to, randomly go diving or something. But I think there's a lot of dress watches that, in my opinion, you can wear every day with no problem. I think the Rolex Explorer, for example, the 36, people might disagree with me, but I think that's a borderline dress watch.
It's for sure it's a really versatile watch. I don't think I would categorize it as a dress watch. I think that's still a sports watch, but it's another one of those like that Speedmaster where like you throw it on leather and it's definitively dressy, and if you throw it on metal, it's definitely more sporty. But yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. And the other thing is there are kind of some dress watches that are on metal bracelets that you could explore. Like you can get a tank on a metal bracelet. The problem is like a lot of those kind of dressier watches, their bracelet options are a little too stylized and then like just a little kind of busy. They're generally more flashy, and I don't know that I've ever seen a dress watch with a bracelet that I really like.
Yeah. No, I agree with you in that aspect. And honestly, I love dress watches, but there's also exceptions to it. Like I owned an IWC 8541. That watch is from the 70s. And that watch was so delicate. It had the most beautiful dial ever. If you haven't seen it, it's on. I'll send you a picture. But the reason why I bought it is the dial is so beautiful, but that dress watch was so delicate and so easy to scratch. So the crystal was acrylic, so it was so easy to crack or just scratch. Like the smallest thing just scratches that crystal. There's no water resistance whatsoever. And when it comes to that aspect, that's when I draw the line. Yeah, maybe dress watches aren't good everyday watches. In fact, in my opinion, they're not really good watches because anything could happen. You could be out and then spill a drink on your wrist and then your watch is gone. You never know.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's definitely dress watches that are more durable, like the one you're referencing. But like a true like high horology dress watch, like just a simple Patek Calatrava or something, are they really as durable as a Submariner, for example? Probably not very close.
No, not even close. And that's the thing. That's actually one of the reasons I sold pretty much 95% of my collection is because I am obsessed with dress watches, but I realized that there's a line, like there's a balance that I have to have a dress watch that is somewhat durable. I'm not gonna pretend that I go diving every day. I'm not gonna pretend I go exploring every day. I don't need something that durable. And when I do, I have like a little Casio right here. If I'm going to actually harm the watch, I baby my watches, so I just wear this Casio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm
In
just
the
not one of those
comments,
guys who
just
can beat
take
up a watch.
taking a look at some of the comments here, Jared Packer. I feel like the whole point of the Explorer is to be dual purpose, wear it with a suit at night, and then with jeans and a t-shirt while slogging through the jungle the next day. Yeah, the Explorer is really versatile that way. Chris Gregg, hey, how you doing, Chris? Mine all seem to be dress/sports crossovers, like the El Primero, the Aquaterra, the Speedmaster. Yeah, there's a lot of those, just versatile, like, depending on what you put them on, they're gonna function for pretty much any occasion, straps and bracelets and whatnot. So yeah, for sure. I mean, that El Primero, if I'm not mistaken, you bought that on the leather and ended up getting the bracelet for it. If I'm not mistaken, I remember you telling me about that, and it probably totally changes the feel of that watch. So yeah, there's a lot of options out there that could be used as double duty, and I think that's probably where a lot of people where their interest falls. But if you were gonna say, let's say I came to you and I was like, all right, AB, I want to get a dress watch. I want to spend $1,000 to $2,000 at the most. I don't really know anything about dress watches. What do I get? What would you say?
1,000 to 2,000. Do you mind if I climb up the ladder? I'll tell you like 300, 500, 1,000, and 2,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you want to do. I'm
Okay, let's
curious
go
what you would
under
suggest.
500. Because I forgot Seiko, the Sarb isn't anymore under 300. It used to be. But knowing you and knowing that you love sports watches, I'm gonna take that into consideration. Definitely under 500, the Sarb 033. Um, I would
Yeah, I had one of those.
recommend.
I really liked that watch. It's probably, I don't know how many Seikos I've owned. Dozens, probably dozens. So that's the only one that I'm like, ugh, I get like the idea of rebuying it all the time. Like I might someday just get another one.
Me too. I saw a picture of it in a Jubilee bracelet, and I almost bought it like 2 days ago. But under 500, I would have recommend the Frederic Constant Classic because that's another watch that I had really good experience with. But it's a little too light, if it makes any sense. It feels too light, and I know that's a factor for a lot of people. A lot of people like their watches to be slightly heavier. So I think under 500, SARB 033, under 1,000, I would have recommended the Nomos Orion, but those seem to be going up in price. So under 1,000, I'm gonna go back to that Frederic Constant Moonface. Honestly, it's a watch that I think you would absolutely love. If you like the JLC Moonface, I think you would love that Frederic Constant. Um, Under 2,000, what would I recommend under 2,000? I have so much in my list that I can't choose one, but I'm trying to take into consideration that you love sports watches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Under 2,000. I can't really. I guess the Black Bay 36. Honestly, I know you don't like it, but if you throw that on the leather, I think it would be a really nice dress watch for you.
Yeah, that's something to consider actually. When I had it, when somebody loaned it to me, I didn't take it off the bracelet and try it on leather. I wonder how that works. But yeah, that's a good list. There's definitely
Are you into like really cool dials? Because under 2,000, one of the nicest dials Nomos has ever made, in my opinion, is the silver cut. They have this the dial is they call it the silver cut. I can't really explain the pattern, but the dial is absolutely beautiful. So if you like that, I think under 2,000, the Nomos silver cut is a better buy.
I looked at the Orions. I don't think I've ever seen that one, but I liked I think it was a 38 millimeter Nomos Orion. I thought that was a really cool watch. If I'm not mistaken, was that an auto or it might have been a mechanical hand one. It's been a while now.
Yeah, manual line, I believe the
Yeah.
Orion. Yeah, they have an automatic version, but I think they have a different name for it. I think Neomatic is the name for it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's another great option. Put me under $5,000, I'll have an entire list for you. Because that's
Yeah.
kind of that's my obsession is dress watches under 5 or 10,000. A lot of watches, like one watch that I would have purchased instead of this Master Geographic was the Master Perpetual, the black dial one.
I've never seen that one, but I mean, for me, like I'm probably never mind. Probably, I am never gonna spend three, four, $5,000 on a dress watch. I think I just wouldn't get enough use out of it. That's too far out of the realm of reality for me. But I could see 500,000 maybe. Even
I might
that would be
convince
pushing it,
you.
but I could almost rationalize that kind of price.
I think if the watch will be durable enough for you to wear every day, um, I think you might change your mind. The JLC Master Moon. I don't know if you've have you seen that in the metal? I don't remember.
I have there's no JLC dealer in my town. I have not been able to, but I think that watch is beautiful.
I think if you see that in person, you might change your mind because that watch is stunning. The
Oh,
black
look,
money.
we have Clive, the watch wrangler here. Hi, Clive. How you doing today? Thanks for coming. Hopefully you've been here for a while. We've been going for about 45 minutes already. Speaking of that, so that's yeah, I mean, that's a good discussion. We could probably go on talking about sports watches and dress watches and the virtues of both of them for a while, but we had a couple of other ideas of things that we considered talking about. So why don't we move on to the topic that everyone is going to be talking about in the coming weeks and months, Basel World 2019 predictions, specifically Rolex, Tudor, Seiko. Now, I know you did a video about a Tudor prediction that you have, so maybe you should lead off with that if you want to, or any other ideas.
I have when it comes to Tudor, I have three predictions. There's one prediction I sort of in my video I said that it's not going to happen, but I take it back. I think it might happen because they spent a lot of money in research and development to make the 39 millimeter movement. The 41 millimeter. I don't know if you guys know this. The in-house movement for the 41 millimeters is not the same like the one in the 39 millimeters. So it's really expensive to develop a new movement. So I don't think they're just gonna waste all that research and development on the Black Bay 58. So without a doubt, they're gonna bring out the 39 millimeters. Now I believe that either this year or next year, but most likely this year, they're gonna come out with the rest of the colors for the Black Bay line in 39 millimeters. So the blue, the burgundy bezel, and the black one without the gilt colors.
Yeah, that would have been my first prediction, is that they expand the Black Bay 58s, for sure. Totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, or to make it a little bit different this year, maybe the Pelagos in 39 millimeters.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I would say no. I don't think that's happening. That's my guess.
Yeah. It's a far-fetched guess. Even when I said that in the predictions, people were like, no. The only reason I think they're going to bring out the Pelagos is because from a sales standpoint, the Black Bay 58 and 39 millimeters was selling like crazy. And every time I went to my authorized dealer, they always seem to have a Pelagos in stock. So maybe somehow they'll figure that that size isn't for everyone because that watch wears really big. Like I had a friend of mine, he sent me it for review. One of my very first videos. The first day I really liked it because I love the Pelagos, but it just wears a little too big in my opinion.
Yeah. Um, what else for Tudor? I know in your video you mentioned the Tudor Submariner. You think that's going to be a thing?
I think the Tudor Submariner, without a doubt, because that teaser they brought out with the triangle at the 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock, because somebody in my comment section said you don't know, it could be the 3 o'clock or the 6 o'clock. So whatever it is, it definitely looks like all of their Submariners. Now, if you know Tudor, you know they had a lot of Submariners. They had way too many references, but they've been trying so hard to have their own identity. So bringing out the Submariner with Mercedes hands just doesn't make sense to me. At least maybe they might do it, but it just doesn't make any sense for them to do that because the mass market doesn't see Tudor as having any relations to Rolex. So if they do that, the mass market will see this and be like, "Oh, this looks like that one Rolex, that Submariner watch." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think in this day and age when they're trying to differentiate themselves, they do a Mercedes hand Submariner either. I don't
well,
think they would do that.
there's two options. Now, the triangle doesn't make sense for them to reissue with the snowflake hands. I've seen a lot of pictures of the 76-100 with snowflake hands, but I think it's modded. I didn't do that much research about that model because I know the 76-100 came with Mercedes hands or lollipop hands. A lot of people were saying that there was the triangle one in the 76-100 with the snowflake hands, but I'm not 100% sure about that. What I predict is they're going to bring out the lollipop hand. In the 76-100, they had something similar to the Mercedes hands, but it looks more like a lollipop hand rather than the Mercedes one.
Yeah, it's
So
just like
that,
an empty circle, right?
yeah, so that's enough difference to like make it look a lot different than a regular Rolex Submariner. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In the comments,
So
Clyde says Tudor needs to drop everything besides the Black Bay. I sort of agree. Have you ever really looked through Tudor's entire product catalog? There is a whole lot of dogs in there.
the advisor, uh, yeah, let's not talk about the advisor.
Well, all right. So those are the Tudor predictions, and yeah, I agree with 2 out of 3. I'm not sure about bringing down the size on the Pelagos that you had mentioned, but definitely some stuff there that I agree with. Now let's do Seiko, and then we'll do Rolex. For Seiko, I predict more limited edition watches. That's my first prediction for Seiko.
Yeah, I said in one of my videos, I don't know if you saw that. I said I think somebody at Omega started working at Seiko and said, "All right, guys, our plan is to make everything limited edition."
Yeah.
Well,
But one thing that I do think, or at least that I hope that they do, is a more, and we had mentioned it a little while ago. I said I think there's a 40 millimeter, but some smaller spring drive watches, 38s, 37s. I,
mhm.
I'm not necessarily predicting that they'll do it because they're really aggressively going after the American market, and I think the Japanese perception of the American market is that Americans want bigger watches. So that's why I'm not super sure that I think they're going to do smaller spring drive watches, but I hope they do because I'd like to see some more options of stuff that I would find attractive.
You see, with Grand Seiko, I don't really follow Grand Seiko that much, and especially that Seiko is trying to separate themselves from Grand Seiko. I'm sort of seeing them as two different brands. The only Grand Seiko I ever really enjoyed, of course not mechanically. Mechanically, they're phenomenal, but aesthetically was the Snowflake. So I don't really have any predictions for Grand Seiko, but I know they're trying to appeal to the US market. So I think I agree. Like I think they're gonna bring out maybe more sports watches in within the Grand Seiko lineup for the USA market.
Hmm.
Um, but for Seiko, I think we talked about this before. Seiko, we can have a lot of predictions, but they're really unpredictable, to be very honest. Like they're really sporadic when it comes to their releases. There's a lot of things that I would predict, or a lot of things I could logically think they should do, but they're not going to do it. But there is one thing I think they're actually going to do. This is like, I will 100% believe that they're going to do this, is that they're going to reissue the Pogue series.
Oh, is that that chronograph watch, right?
The chronograph. And I think I could be wrong, but that's because this year is their 50th anniversary for the Pogue. Um, so it only makes sense for them to reissue that watch. Very popular watch, and it's their anniversary. So, I mean, if I worked at Seiko, I would jump on it, and I would literally release a reissue of the Pogue, and it would be really popular, regardless if vintage collectors get mad or not. You know?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I wouldn't have thought of that, but yeah, no, that's a pretty insightful prediction for sure.
Hopefully, I don't know. I don't really like the Pogue aesthetically, but knowing that there's so many Seiko fans out there that love that watch, I hope they do that for those collectors. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we got more limited editions. I think that's a given. Smaller spring drives is what I'm hoping for, but I'm not confident in your idea of the Pogue. That's three good predictions. Let's jump on to Rolex predictions. I am going to say they're gonna make more watches. That's my first prediction. I think that their watches are gonna become more available. At least that's the one I'm hoping for.
I think Rolex. I only have one prediction for Rolex. I'm gonna try to come up with more right now to keep the conversation going, but I think they're gonna have the Batman with a Jubilee bracelet and a newer movement, the newest movement that they put on the Pepsi. Honestly, I think maybe the Jubilee bracelet is just wishful thinking, but I think they're gonna update the movement on that one.
Hmm. Yeah, that could be.
Oh, and one more, the Smurf. I think they're gonna bring out the Smurf in stainless steel.
Stainless steel Smurf? No, I don't think that's gonna happen. That would be, yeah, that would be crazy. Corey in the comments says Coke. How about a Coke GMT on a fully brushed bracelet? That would be, I think, what everybody wants, right?
Mhm. I think the reason why I don't think the Coke is because they literally just released the Pepsi, and I think they want to keep that hype going for a little bit before they release the Coke. And the only reason it's kind of like the only reason I predicted the Smurf was because I used to think that Rolex would never like would care about their customers, I guess to say, and not piss them off. Because when they had the GMT Pepsi in white gold, if I bought the GMT in white gold and then they came out with the exact same look and everything, but in stainless steel, I would be really upset. And they did that with the Sky Dweller and they did it with the Pepsi. So I believe that's why I was like, maybe they're gonna do it with the Smurf as well because they obviously don't care about the people who bought the white gold version.
Yeah.
You know, that's my prediction.
Clive says precious metal. I can't say the word precious. Precious metal. No, I lost my place. Okay, precious metal sub with new movement and thinner lugs. Now that for sure makes sense. Generally, that's what they do, right? They first come out with something in precious metals that is going to eventually get filtered down to the stainless steel sports models. I don't know if I believe they're going to reprofile the Submariner's lugs, though.
I would disagree completely with reprofiling the lugs because honestly, as enthusiasts, that's what we want. But a mass market, like what most people that buy a Rolex, let's be real here. A lot of people that buy Rolexes that aren't enthusiasts buy it because of the status. And they made the watch beefier for a reason. And I believe that reason was to make the watch have more presence on the wrist because that's what people want. When they go to Rolex, they want a watch with more presence because a lot of people who aren't enthusiasts, I guess, or could be enthusiasts, who knows, buy Rolexes for status. And to have something that has a lot of status, you want it to be a little bit flashier, which with the ceramic bezel, for example, it makes it a little bit shinier. But with the thicker lugs, it makes it beefier without having to be oversized. If and that's the only reason I don't think they will ever bring down the lugs.
I mean,
Um,
I wouldn't say never. I think it'll happen eventually, just because, style and taste and fashion and everything changes. But I agree with you. I think that they're making these watches for the majority of people that are yeah, they're buying them as aspirational status symbols, and it looks bigger and more impressive. I don't think that they're gonna, quote unquote, fix the lugs. I think is yeah, Craig Ship. He said, yeah, they'll fix the lugs. I don't think they're gonna fix the lugs yet. I don't think they're ready for it. I think they are pretty happy with where it's at. I could see a new movement for sure, since they have the new movement built. Yeah, I'm not predicting any major redesign of the case geometry, though. I don't think so.
yeah, honestly, I think Rolex should just focus on their price increase. That's my opinion.
Yeah, price increase, that would be a fair prediction. I wouldn't be shocked to see that. Somebody had mentioned Omega in the comments. Let me scroll up. Who was that? I Heart Sushi. My prediction is that Omega will announce a limited edition of another limited edition. But Omega's not at Basel World this year, right? Like, or
Yeah,
Swatch in general. They pulled out.
everybody's out. I think they're working on their own. Like what I've heard was they're working on their own show, but it seems like Omega is releasing watches. Like they just released a watch, I think yesterday or 2 days ago. They're just releasing it throughout the year. I don't know if they're actually gonna wait for an event to show all the releases. Like they just released a 43 millimeters, which by the way, not to get sidetracked, but that's huge. A 43 millimeters Seamaster in titanium like 2 days ago. And the Omega DeVille 50th anniversary, I think. I don't know why everybody's having a 50th anniversary. Um, but an Omega DeVille 50th anniversary, also they announced it like 2 days ago, which I would think that two big releases like that, they would wait for a fair, but they just released it out of the blue. Like nobody was expecting Omega to release anything, but they just released it.
Hmm. Chris Gregg in the comments says they'll certainly not make the lugs on a new sub case thinner than the new GMT case, which we've already seen. I think all hope is lost for another generation. And then that's a really good point. At best, they're just going to match the GMT case in the Submariner, but they've had the opportunity to do that for a long time. You know what I mean? I just don't see why they would suddenly be like, oh, let's just do it now. Why didn't they do it forever ago? I mean, how long is the GMT case, which is in and of itself a maxi or super case? It's just a little bit more slender. It's been the way that it's been for how many years, right? Since like 2010 or something. So why didn't they already do it? They're not going to go back to as thin of a profile as the pre-ceramic Submariners. Uh, that's just not going to happen, and they're not going to change the GMT case because they just brought out the Pepsi, and it is what it is, right? Like I 100% agree with Chris's comment that it is what it is for a generation. And what is a generation? Like 20 years or something, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I was reading the comments and I agree with Clive. Maybe on a more like I agree with Clive. He said like Omega doesn't need Basel World because they have Hodinkee. The reason why I agree is I don't necessarily, I'm not really thinking about just Hodinkee, but I'm thinking about that maybe Swatch Group are like thinking in a way that they don't need a fair to be showcasing their watches because everybody is online they're reaching everybody online. So I think they're going to focus more on trying to reach people through the internet rather than having a fair about their releases. And going with Hodinkee or Fratello watches or anybody does that better than a fair. Like how many people could a fair hold versus the internet where everybody's just watching? You know what I mean? So
And,
maybe
and it
some,
costs them nothing, right? That's the other big thing. These setting up these fairs, I'm sure, cost millions of dollars.
and if they have to pay Hodinkee a little bit, I mean, we saw the Ben Clymer, I guess, Hodinkee CK2998. I don't think it's the CK2998, but it has the same case. They don't, even if they have to pay Hodinkee for promotion, it's gonna be a fraction of what they pay in a fair, which is millions and millions of dollars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a smarter move, in my opinion, because everybody's waiting online to see those releases. Those people who go to Basel World go to take pictures so they could post it online. You know what I mean?
Clive says affairs have cost me thousands of dollars. I think he said not a fair, but a fair. I think he might have misheard AB. But so we're at 8 o'clock, and we have other things that we wanted to talk about. Now I know you have to jet because you have some prior engagement at like 8:30. So let's do uh, one more topic that I have written down here, and then we'll wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so, if that works for you.
That's perfectly fine.
Now, as we had already discussed, I know that you're into dress watches quite a bit, but also, as you've told me, vintage and pre-owned watches. Like you've owned gazillions of watches, vintage watches, older watches, and as probably everyone knows, I am sort of terrified of dipping my toe into the pre-owned and especially vintage markets. I have this fear, and I think it's a well-founded fear because I've seen it in other collecting hobbies and industries where when somebody has something that's not working perfectly, their mentality isn't get it fixed, it's just get rid of it. So, how many watches in the pre owned market or the vintage market are problem watches that people are just trying to be rid of? That's my fear with going into that pre owned market, with going into that vintage market. But go ahead and tell me what your thoughts are
Okay,
on.
in my opinion, pre-owned and vintage should be separate. Um, and I don't have a fear with pre-owned. I've developed a fear with vintage, and I'll tell you a story. Like I have a fear with vintage, and I have a fear with the Rolex AD list. Those are the two fears that I have because I know both of those I'll probably never get on the list, and I'll probably never have a proper vintage because every single time I bought a vintage watch, not that something went wrong, but a lot of the times, like one of the things that scared me was there's when you're servicing a vintage watch, first of all, I have no idea how they're getting original parts for all those vintage watches. That's my first fear, I guess, when it comes to vintage. But I overcame that by buying, I guess, vintage watches with a premium. So when it came to vintage, I bought them from more reliable sources, I guess. People like I don't know if you want me to mention anyone, but
I don't care if you have some suggestions, like it might help people that are sort of in the same boat as me, where it's like, oh, I'd really like to get I don't know, a vintage Omega, but like, where do I get it from? Who can I trust? So yeah, if you
I
have some
ended up
suggestions.
I ended up trusting two people. Analog Shift is really, really good with their watches because with their listing, they're very transparent, and that's what I love. They'll tell you, by the way, this dial has been repainted. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
they're very transparent. And there's other people, I won't mention names, but they're never transparent, and that's when you should avoid them. Basically, you need to do your research first and check their listings. If everything is always 100%, stay away because vintage watches will never be 100%. Oh, this perfectly conditioned Omega, Seamaster from the 60s. That makes no sense. There's nothing called a perfect condition 60, something from the 1960s.
Yeah.
But when you find someone like Analog Shift, they're very clear with their listing. This has been repainted, this has damage here, and so on. You know what I mean? So I learned to trust them. And also my personal watchmaker, Orlando Vintage Watch Co. The guy, if you meet him in person, the watchmaker, he loves watches, and he's one of those guys who loves vintage watches more than anything. And he's like a walking encyclopedia. So when you speak with him and then he explains every little detail about the watch, it's easier to buy from him. But I had an experience with an Omega Geneve. I bought from a seller in Korea a really beautiful Omega Geneve. It looked perfect. In fact, he used a picture of the original movement, but someone else's picture. So I got the watch. I wore it. I was in a honeymoon phase. I wore it for like 2 days. But then I was like, okay, I can't be stupid. I need to take this to my watchmaker and see if everything is correct. Just because it's working doesn't mean there's nothing, like there's no problem. The watchmaker opened the watch and immediately told me, you have to return this. I said, why? He said, okay, come here, look at the movement. Usually vintage Omega movements have stamps on them. Like they will stamp like the 565 caliber or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah, I've seen some pictures.
This one had nothing. This one had nothing in it. The movement was completely replaced. The dial was completely repainted. He even showed me whoever repainted it was impatient because there were paint marks that you could only see with a loop, but there were paint marks on the markers. And the watch was horrible. Like if it was really, the movement was wrong, the dial was horribly repainted. And then the seller would not take the watch back. He said that you had it for 2 days, you could have done anything. And then I said, but I have a video. This is one thing also I do, and I recommend everybody doing. When you unbox, when you buy a watch pre-owned, always have a video of you unboxing the watch. Show every little detail, and then unbox the watch, and then show them exactly like every little close-up of the watch. So if the seller ever tries to, deceive, like lie and say there's, oh, you changed this or you did that, you have video proof. And I would also recommend writing a date, or showing the date on your phone or whatever in that video. So to prove that you unboxed it the day you received it. That's one advice that I really recommend people doing, because that's what saved me. And then I
That's
told
a good
him,
idea. Actually, it had occurred to me. I just got something that was rather expensive, and as I was unboxing, I was like, should I take like pictures of this or something? It's probably worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of whatever that saying is.
and that was one thing that saved me. So when I told him I have footage, he immediately, without even responding to me, he sent me a return label, because then he knew, okay, he got caught basically. So that was something that made me really scared from vintage. And I saw in the comments somebody said you can obtain a perfect vintage new old stock. That's true. But if you think about it, how many people are actually buying watches and just putting it in a safe? And when they actually do that, all the big sharks are already hunting that watch down. They're going to buy it for a lot more than what you're willing to pay for it. And then when they list it with their glamorous pictures, they're going to charge a lot more because it's new old stock. So when it comes to new old stock, it does exist, but there's two problems. Either the big sharks are hunting for them, or it's not really new old stock. They just cleaned it up and repainted the dial.
Well, I would expect that probably in this day and age, 20, 30 years from now, there's going to be lots of new old stock Rolex Hulks, for example, like because people know like it's an artificial collectible, just kind of like comic books from the 1990s. Everyone bought all these books thinking they're going to be worth millions of dollars in the future. So there's people that are buying them now thinking like, oh, what's going to be worth so much in the future? So I think going forward, you'll be able to find a lot of new old stock, but people weren't thinking about that in the 60s, were they?
Well, that's because we're more aware as collectors, and I'm gonna say because of the internet. Because of the internet and all of the research back in the day, there wasn't. It was very little research. You had to buy books to research and stuff like that. And when you bought a watch back in the day, you bought a watch because you needed to know the time. You know what I mean? We didn't have like the time everywhere. If I look at my microwave, if I look at my stove, I have the time everywhere. But back in the day, they needed that for actual use. Whereas today, we really don't need a watch. But if you buy a Kermit, where we think, and I personally believe so, that the Kermit will go up in value. So it's smart to buy it and not use it. Whereas back in the day, it doesn't make sense for you to buy something that you need on a day-to-day basis and not use it. That's why new old stock is actually a lot harder than you think. And also, for the most part, it's really easy to like. There's a lot of professional people who like redial it, like they paint the dials, and they're so good at it that even some professionals can't detect that it's a good repaint dial. They just think it's new old stock, you know. So that's also another scary thing when it comes to vintage.
Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. Let's see. Clive says people weren't thinking about anything in the 60s. If you remember the 60s, you weren't really there. I was not born until 79, so I definitely wasn't there, but I bet he's speaking the truth on that one.
I agree. And if like I would imagine if I lived in the 60s, if I bought an Omega Seamaster, I bought it because I wanted to know what time it was. That's
Right.
the only reason I bought it. I didn't buy it because it will be collectible and people will pretend that damaged patina is collectible in 2018, you know what I mean? So
Mhm. I heard Sushi says Clive and Craig wristwatch check. Craig's wearing his titanium Grand Seiko Spring Drive diver. Craig, that's what Craig's wearing, and Clive is wearing. Oh, he's got so many watches. The Parmigiani. That's what Clive is wearing. Those are my guesses.
Parmigiani.
Yeah, Clive got a. I forget the model. Oh, the Red Sea Dweller. I should have known. I knew you just got that too. I'm an idiot. But
Which Red Sea? A double Red Sea Dweller or the newer beefy case?
no, he got the newer. What do they call it? The SD43.
Good choice.
But all right, well, it's getting close to 8:15. I know you got somewhere to be, so let's wrap this up. Thanks a lot for coming on with me tonight. AB from Watch Collecting Strategy. If you guys don't know his channel, there is a link again down in the description. You should check out his channel, subscribe, and yeah, thanks again for coming on. Thanks to everyone in the comments that's been watching. I appreciate everyone. Do you have anything in closing you'd like to add before we sign off today?
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm honestly, I'm really honored that you had me here on your channel. And guys, thank you so much for watching.
All right, cool. Well, we'll cut this off then because I know you got somewhere to be. Thanks again, everybody. Hopefully, we'll do this again soon. Have a good night.